Hi there. In our earlier tutorial, we covered some various React hooks. Now we will focus on a special scenario of useEffect hooks that is called infinite loop. It is a side effect of useEffect hook. Let's see how can we create infinite loop from useEffect hook, and how can we solve the useEffect hook, and we can use this cabbage into our benefit to create a timer. So the target of this tutorial is to create a timer button, and by clicking this start and stop button, we will try to stop our timer. So let's see at first how the useEffect hook create infinite loop. For that, let's import a useEffect hook, and inside that if I try to access or modify my state this way, it will, and we can see that useEffect hook require the count variable as a dependency array. So if I add the count variable here, count, my warning is gone, but if I save my file, it will create infinite loop. So let's save and check it out. You can see this. If at first, let's remove my loop. Now you can see that it render or re-render my timer function again and again this many times. Let's see how the useEffect hook create the loop. For that, let's create a set timeout 100. Move this file here, and again put the count variable as a dependency array. Let's refresh the page, and if I save my file, I can see the counter is the timer is created, and it will creating again and again. It increases the value again and again. But we know that set timeout runs only one. So how this value increasing or continuously looping? It created by useEffect hook. Let's see how. At first, when my timer function, timer component mount with React application or any React DOM, it runs useEffect hook at first time. But when we add a dependency as this useEffect hook and add the same setState method inside this useEffect hook, what this happen? When this line invoke, it will modify the React DOM, and set method, useState method, modifying React DOM, it will re-render the component so that the state value the changes of the state value appears in the DOM. That is the reason useState hook always re-render the DOM after modification. So this line re-render my DOM. That means this line recreate this timer component again, and in useEffect hook runs immediately after my DOM is ready. So when DOM is ready, it will force my DOM again to re-render, and after the DOM is ready, my useEffect hook re-renders automatically. If I put a empty dependency, then my useEffect hook runs only once. But if I put same value in the state value, then when my DOM render by this state value, then the dependency is this one, then useEffect hook renders again and again. This is create an infinite loop. So we can see then how useEffect hook create infinite loop. Now let's see how can we stop this timer by clicking this button. To stop this timer, I have to use a constant timer is equal to this one. This way I have to assign the return value of set timeout into a variable. Then I have to add the set timer value here, like clear timeout, then the timer name. But I cannot use this inside variable inside a block level variable in outside from the block level, because the constant or the let keyword make the variable scope level block level. So to use the timer variable outside of this scope, I have to create timer here. So let timer is equal to 0. Then I have to modify the timer this way. If I save my file, I can see there are some errors or warning, and there are warning, but my loop stop, my countdown stops. But I have some errors in my terminal and in my code editor, because in my VS Code editor I already configured the ESLint. So that is the error shows. The error says that if I hover over this file, I can see that it says that to prevent assigning the timer variable from outside React hook, useEffect hook will be lost after render. To prevent the value over time, store the useEffect hook and keep the mutable value into the current property. That means it says that when we create any variable outside this useEffect hook, it will reassign or recreate it every time when this component re-renders. So to make the value or to have the value preserved in the render time, I have to use the useRef hook. This way. Now we know that useRef hook has current property. So now I can use the set timer dot current. If I save my file, I can see my timer starting, and if I click this button, my timer is stopped. So it solved one problem. Now let's see how can we start. How can we click this button to start my loop again? For that, I am using a little trick, so that if the value or the state value is available in my count variable, so if I update my current variable this way, it will work for my timer. I can see if I click this button, my timer is stopped. When I click this start button, my timer is starting, because this syntax. But this syntax will be not suitable for every situation. So let's start our timer regular the absolute way. That will be work on every situation. So for that, remove this line. I have a timer function here. That means I to use this same function, we have to use move the function outside of my useEffect, so that I can use this function inside my start timer handler. So for that, let's remove this function and name the function as tick. Let's create the function. copy the value. Now my timer function is now outside of my useEffect hook, but as soon as it outside in my useEffect hook, it says that I need to add as a dependency array this timer. So I have to add this timer as a dependency array. So tick. When I do that, it creates another error, same error that we saw when we fetch the timer with useRef hook, but this time it is a function. So instead of a useRef hook, I have to use the useMemo, useCallback hook, because I can use here instead of useRef, I can use the useMemo hook to do the same thing. Let's see. Comment out this line. Use memo, and memo take the two argument. First one is function and second one is object. Actually, let's import the useMemo first. Memo. Now we have to return an object because useRef returning an object and timer.current. So I have to return an object. Return object, property is called current is equal to 0. It do the same thing as we have with the useRef hook. Now we can handle, if it is a variable, we can handle by useMemo hook, but if it is a function, then we have to use the useCallback hook. So I have to move the function here, useCallback, same syntax. First one is function, second one is the dependency array, and then I have to put the function inside my variable, and I have to return that function. Actually, I have to return not function, I have to return this line because I am already in function. So when we do that, it remove that error, but it shows another warning, say that I need to add this this variable into as a dependency. So I have to use that count. Now my error is gone. If I save my file, I can see it works regular. It works as we expected. Stop timer, start timer. Okay, start timer not after start timer not works because we do not invoke the tick function inside my start timer. So I have to tick function here. If I save my file, if I stop and then start, it will start again. Now we know that when we use useEffect, actually this one, when we use useEffect, it is a event handler or timer. So we have to remove this timer with a clear effect. useEffect has another function called cleaner function. So for that I have to return cleaner function, and inside this cleaner function I have to use the same code here like set clear function. It is mandatory because when we create or invoke any function in JavaScript, the function will be available in our call stack, and that after the call stack function invoke, the function value will be available in our event loop. So it is a JavaScript concept. So when we use any type of timer function, we always have to clear that timer this way. If I use a regular event, then I have to clear that event in this cleaner function. That is the reason this function is called clear function. So if I save my file, it works again exactly the same way as before. Stop the timer, stop the timer, and in the reset button we already have to reset our counter value. So in the reset button, actually where is the reset button, I already assigned the reset button to default. So that is the reason reset button automatically works. Now let's if I refresh my file, refresh my page, I can see my timer start immediately. So I need to instead start, I need to stop my timer. When the timer will be when we click this button we want, then our timer will be start. So for that I have to create another hook called useEffect. And inside this useEffect I am calling the stop handler function here, or I can create copy paste this line. So instead of copy paste this line again and again, I can stop my timer here. Stop timer handler this way. So what this function do? This function create the timer, but immediately this function invoke and the timer will be stopped. If I save my file, I can see now my timer do not start automatically. It will only start when I click this button and stop. And if I click this button, if I refresh my file, I can see my timer is stopped. So now this code is little bit messy. Let's make this code a little bit simpler. For that, we know that useEffect hook take 2 arguments. So remove the function argument and it is a simpler version. And the set timer is already a function handler, already a function, means callback function. So we no need extra callback function here. So remove this line and remove this line. So it will be the same. Now let's move this function after the useEffect function. Now when we do that, actually I call the useHandler function, so I have to always put after that function because I have to put here, or I can do remove this function, or actually both 2 function in top of my useEffect hook. Now this function is a singular function, so I no need bracket. This one and this one again too, so I no need bracket. So and again this is a clear function, simple single statement, so I no need this argument again. This is my counter timer code. Now you can see this is a lot more simpler. And if I remove this callback with return statement like this to simplify my code, but it will create little bit complex though it seems. Remove the comment. Now remove my useMemo hook here from here. So this is my complete remove complete timer countdown. So if I save my file, I can refresh my page, I can start my timer, stop my timer, reset the timer. You can see when I reset the timer, it immediately start our timer again. Suppose stop, click this button, reset, and immediately start. So where our is reset button, that means this handler. So after we reset the not this one, reset this one. So I have to stop timer here too. So let's remove this function as a reset timer handler and create the function here put the actually name will be the reset timer handler, and no need this line. Now we will stop after my reset timer starts, so I have to call, or I have to stop my timer by this method, or I can invoke this function again. So I have to use stop timer handler function. Now let's see, our problem is solved. If I actually refresh the page, start our timer, stop the timer. Now let's see, create this button, it reset, do not pause. The reason is that it will continue. So actually to reset my when I stop my timer it works, but when I reset my timer it again restarts. This way I cannot save this, I cannot use them, so I have to another way. For that I have to create another variable called reset and set reset, and this way I assign the value false, boolean value. Now when my counter value will reset, then my reset value will be true. So for that, set reset is equal to true. Now when I change this file, I want my stop effect to run again, so I have to use the reset as a dependency. That means when we click this reset button, it will change the state of a reset handler. That means this will be changed, and when this value will be changed, I need to run this stop handler again. Hopefully this will work. Save my file. If click this button, it will start, stop, again start, and if I reset my button, I can see that when I reset this button, now my countdown is stopped. So this is the full code of how to create a timer. So let's see in other tutorials.